All right, hi everybody. David Fogel back with you, CEO of the Symphonina Foundation. Back with another Symphonina Foundation podcast in this 2026. Happy New Year, everybody. And I think I don't know what podcast number we're on. I'll have to check with Daniel Fisher to see what we're on, but I'm guessing we're somewhere around number 130 now. Been doing a lot of them. It's great. We got some big plans for the podcast series coming up too, with some guest hosts, as we'll learn about as we go on with the year. But today I am joined by Flutist Ragan Whiteside. Reagan, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Well, wonderful. And I have to say, it's just a pleasure to meet you in person. I met you through your music, as we were saying before we got started. So I met Reagan through her music by listening to Music Choice on the television, and I was listening to a jazz station. Because my wife and I were on a little trip in Honolulu, and the weather was really, really lousy, I gotta say. Usually it's great, but it was raining and raining and raining, and then, we were in the hotel room, and I'm working on things, I'm working on music stuff, and I've got music on, and here comes this tune called Fancy Footwork with some brilliant flute playing. I'm like, who is that? And I figure, okay, I got to find this person. So I messaged Reagan and told her how much I enjoyed listening to her, and she tells me, thanks very much, but also that she has a classical background. So I said, well, let's find out more. So Reagan, how did you get started in music, and when did it go from classical to jazz, and do you still play classical?
Well, I guess my story is kind of similar to a lot of people in that in the fourth grade, the band teacher comes by recruiting for the band, and I actually wanted to play drums.
Okay.
And they said, well, there's not enough drums and all the boys want to play them, so pick something else. I said, okay, I would like to play trumpet. And they're like, well, we're out of trumpets. And I was like, oh my God, well, let's cut to the chase. What do you have?
What do you have? Yeah, right.
And they said a flute and a clarinet. And I was like, well, okay, I guess I'll take a flute. And I got it home, took about a week to get a sound out of it. And but I am one of those people where I'm not going to let it get me, so
Yeah.
I just kept going, especially because my friends all were like, tweet, tweet, tweet. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I got a sound out of it. I started playing. I started to like it, started getting good at it. Then it was, okay, well, I would like to get private lessons. My parents said, okay, but you got to stick with it, kids. And my teacher said, well, here's a piece. And I said, but I don't want to play classical music. I want to play jazz. And he said, get your foundation in classical first. You can play jazz later. Okay. So here I am being forced into something else, but I started to like it. I started getting good at it, and I actually started composing classical music. I did a few flute duets, and I actually won national competitions with them.
Nice.
And continuing to play and compete on flute and performance. And I said, you know what? Maybe I can do something with this, for a living. So I took off going to the Cleveland Institute of Music. And after 2 years, I transferred to the Harrod Conservatory. I did graduate with my degree in classical music performance and went home and decided I didn't want to play classical music anymore.
Oh my gosh, there's thousands of hours into that, but yep.
Yes, yes. And my parents were just thrilled. So okay, well, what are you gonna do now? I don't know. So I went to, it was like the ink wasn't even dry on my degree yet. And I went to this little jazz club in Scarsdale, New York, of all places. And the place was really tiny. Maybe it held 50, 75 people at the most.
Okay.
And Bob Baldwin and Marion Meadows and a whole bunch of cats were playing, and I was sitting right up front. I was just blown away. I was blown away, and I was like, this is what I should be doing. I don't know how I forgot that I wanted to go into jazz, but that jogged my memory. And so I went up to Bob after the show and I said, I'm a classical musician, but I'm thinking about going into jazz. Do you have any advice for me? And we ended up talking for like 45 minutes. And he invited me to a session that he was doing like a couple days later to do a jingle for CD 101.9, which was the smooth jazz station in New York at the time.
Okay.
So I over there with my flute in tow, and he says, "Well, do you want to play on the jingle?" And I'm like, yeah, of course. And I ended up playing on it, which ended up playing every morning for like a year in New York, and I was shocked. It really kind of stoked the fire. So I started my transition. Bob taught me how to break every single rule that had been drilled into my head in conservatory.
Hmm.
And Dennis Johnson, who owned the studio, was showing me how to run a session, how to make music with MIDI and with computers and
Hmm.
all of this great stuff. So I had like this crazy boot camp for a couple of years. And the result was a three-song demo, which I started, writing because I'm a composer as well. So I started writing my album. So the demo became a five-song EP. The five-song EP became a whole album that was released in 2008.
Wow. Okay. But then you have, I have my notes here. We have 14 years between 2008 and 2022 when you received the
Yes.
Best Contemporary Jazz Artist Award at the Jazz Music Awards. So congratulations for that. That's a big
Thank you.
honor. What we went through COVID and all the other things that happened between those times. So
Mhm.
how did you develop your jazz artistry? Let's put it that way.
A lot of scales. That was like the first 2 years of everything. It's like I knew, of course, I knew my scales. I'm a classical musician, but many different types of scales from other places all around the world that,
Mm,
I mean, there's got to be 20 or 30 different scales that I had not touched yet
mm-hmm,
up to that point, outside of, your major, minor, and variations of. And so being able to retrain my ear to hear what scale I should play over what chord.
mm-hmm,
And that kind of became my roadmap. And of course, the rest of it, I mean, you're going to look at it from academia when you're thinking about scales and what you're going to play over a chord. But then once my ear really got accustomed to hearing it, then my soul took over.
mm-hmm.
And that's how I started writing and arranging the things that I have on my albums. And so
Yeah.
I'm 6 albums in now.
It's terrific. When you're playing something like Fancy Footwork, is it improvised at all when we get to the final thing?
Oh,
Are
yes.
you okay? Yeah, it's kind of what I figured. Sometimes things are scripted, sometimes they're
Mhm.
not scripted, but I kind of felt like you were winging it for some of that part, and it was all great.
Oh, definitely. Oh, thank you.
Okay, so how
Sure
much
thing.
how much how much improvisation do you do when you're recording for an album versus when you're performing live?
Well, with the album, okay, so each song is structured. You have your intro, your verse, your chorus, your bridge, all of those things are pretty much scripted. When I'm
Hmm.
composing, that is going to be what it is. But then once I get to the solo section, that is improvised many times.
Hmm.
And then I'll pick the best one or pieces from what
Hmm.
I've done, mash it all together, and that's what it ends up being. The ad libs are always improvised. You're pretty much in the studio saying, okay, you're just gonna do ad libs for, next 20 minutes. We're gonna just put the song on a loop and you're just gonna play whatever, and whatever comes out is what comes out. And I was like, okay, great. It's kind of easy breezy that way.
Yeah.
Now, live, it's a combination because sometimes people, there are songs, sometimes people just want to hear what they heard on the album. And so I have to go back and remember what I played.
Yeah, for sure, right?
And so for a few songs, yes, and especially the songs that have done well on radio,
Hmm.
people want to hear that solo. But then we'll also extend the song in live version, and that's when everybody improvises, and it's just, you just let the music flow through you.
Yeah, it is part of the heart of jazz. It doesn't have to be, but I think it's always appreciated by a jazz audience. You mentioned on the radio, and I believe you have not one but two syndicated radio shows. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, yes. The first show I'm actually on WCLK in Atlanta, Atlanta's jazz station. And on Saturdays, so it's Saturdays with Ragan Whiteside. That show is some contemporary jazz and some straight ahead or mainstream jazz. So it's a nice mixture, great for cleaning your house in the morning.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's a 4 hour show. And then I have a syndicated show called The Get Down with Ragan Whiteside. And that's a 2 hour show that is more of the, I call it the bump of jazz, really. So it's going to have a little bit more R&B elements, a little bit more soul, but
Okay.
still, keeping with contemporary jazz. So I'll play Pat Metheny and then turn around and play Snarky Puppy and
Okay.
then, throw in some Lettucey and, maybe a little Kurt Elling, so it's eclectic, but it flows and people seem to enjoy it.
A good potpourri there. That's right. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. All right. All right. You mentioned something else about learning MIDI, and if I understand right, also you have some work that you've done on flute samples in a flute sample library. And I would like to learn quite a bit more about that. Let's hear a little bit about how you started to do that and what the recording process was like, and how other people can get to listen and maybe use them.
Sure. Yeah. When you have software that comes with a bunch of sounds and sound banks, so you have, keyboards and strings and horns and whatever else, I have always thought that the flute sounds were lacking. Very much so. The closest flute sound that kind of sounds like a close, kind of close, it's a Yamaha keyboard flute. And I hear a lot of people using it, but I think that we can do better
Hmm.
with the authenticity, right? And so there's not going to be anything more authentic than an actual human being playing a flute. So we went into the studio, and this took probably broken up over a few days, but probably about 15 hours.
Okay.
And I just went in and played snippets of little melodies, little licks in different genres.
Hmm.
So there's classical, there's jazz, there's R&B, there's rock, there's reggae, there's a whole lot of things that everything can be used for Latin. And so each sound bank, each genre bank has about 100 different licks in it.
Hmm.
People can download it and bring it into their songs and chop it and put
Right.
it together to however, they want to use it.
And I think too, when you're doing things that are, let's call them licks, but maybe musical phrases anyway, right, where notes are connected and they're not played in isolation, the result when you do chop them up can be much, much better than if you
Mhm.
did them from two things that were recorded in isolation and you have to try to join them.
Right. Exactly. So that's why, I mean, we definitely have a lot of continuity with things. I mean, honestly, you could probably put together a whole song from
There you
all
go.
the different licks that I played, you know.
Oh my goodness! Hey, did you tell me you used to play strings too? You used to play violin and cello. What
Yes.
what happened?
Yes. Well, I started with violin and I was getting pretty good. But then there was a parade that used to go through the town where I grew up. I grew up in Mount Vernon, New York. Mount Vernon is right outside of New York City in Westchester County.
Okay.
And there was a parade that happened every year where all of the public schools would march through the town. It was probably a mile long, and all of the bands would play. So all of the elementary schools, middle schools, high school. And I wanted to be in this parade, and they wouldn't let me do it with a violin.
Hmm.
So that's why I
Okay.
when the band teacher came by in the fourth grade, I jumped at the
I
chance,
got you.
to play
Yeah, yeah,
something else.
yeah, yeah.
But then, I still kind of played it though. And then in high school, I picked up cello,
Hmm.
and I really do enjoy it. The only reason why I don't play around with it now is because I don't have one. But I have pretty much played just about every instrument.
Okay.
I play all of them well enough to teach a kid. And this was all from going to summer camp, believe it or not. There was a summer program when I was coming up, 4 weeks, just a couple hours a day over the summer. And every summer I would take a different instrument. People were like, "Well, what happened to the flute? I'm still playing the flute. What happened to this one? I'm still playing that too."
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
it just stoked my love of instruments and music.
I'm guessing that that's something you would recommend to other young people who are interested in music, like, try a bunch of things.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Because there are so many different colors in so many different instruments. And especially if you want to compose something, to be able to really tap into those different colors and see how they can play off of each other within a piece. You can't beat it. If you can actually play those instruments, it really gives you a leg up.
Yeah, I think also for composing, if you played something, you have a maybe a little bit better or a lot better, depending on how good you got at the instrument,
Mhm.
understanding of what it is that you're asking the performer to do,
Exactly.
and how it's going to go with what everybody else is doing. So I
hmm
encourage that too. Have you done a lot of orchestrations of your jazz work? I bet either you have or you should, one of the two.
I'm in the should category, and
Okay,
that's actually that's on my list for 2026.
good.
I definitely want to arrange it for orchestra and for flute choir. So, I'm definitely inspired. So I
Nice.
think
Okay. Well,
it
we'll
sounds
look
great.
forward to you keep us posted. As you know, at the
Okay.
Symphonina Foundation, we're all about spreading the joy of symphonic music to young audiences and older audiences around
Yes.
the world. So we'll be looking forward to that. I know you're touring, like I said, in Texas and Maryland, Tennessee. What's up next for you?
Houston is definitely coming up in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And while I'm preparing for that, also finishing up the album. It's actually like a part one, part two kind of situation. So we're looking to have part one out in the spring. So I got a lot
Okay.
of fire under myself, but
All right. We'll let you get right to it then.
yeah.
Okay. Reagan, it has been great catching up with you. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Oh, I'm on social media at Ragan Whiteside Music on Facebook or at Ragan Whiteside on Instagram. And my website is reaganwhiteside.com.
All right, Reagan, we're going to listen to some more of your fancy footwork on the way out here. And we wish you all the best. If there's anything we can do at the Symphonina Foundation to be of help to you, you just let us know.
Thank you so much. I'll hold you to that.
I will. Yeah.